Every self-respecting Mediterranean civilization had its founding myth. And of course, Carthage was no exception. The only problem for Carthage was that the best-known version of it was written by a Roman poet, Virgil. In it, Queen Dido fled Tyre and established a new homeland here. She then met the itinerant Aeneas. She then also fell in love with him, but he, unfortunately, had much better things to do. In fact, he had to rush off to found the city of Rome. She then died of a broken heart. The Carthaginian version is slightly different. In that one, she isn't in fact called Queen Dido at all, she's called Queen Elisa. And when she arrives here, she persuades the resident Berber tribesmen to part with the same amount of land as could be covered by the hide of an ox. They agree to this deal, and then she promptly cuts up the hide of the ox into very, very thin strips indeed, and comes up with enough to encircle the hillside behind me. The myth goes on that she actually sacrificed herself on a funeral pyre to ensure the good luck of the founded city. The truth is that Carthage was in fact originally a Phoenician trading outpost, in fact a staging post for these inveterate sailors on their way back to the Middle East. Now, we really know very, very little about the Carthaginians, but what we do know about them is that they were quite phenomenal traders. We're talking about a people who were trading in gold in Central and Southern Africa at the same time as they were buying tin in Cornwall. Obviously, very quickly, they established themselves as a wealthy mercantile power. But there are two things I find really quite extraordinary about them. First of all, they never had a Carthaginian army. They always hired mercenaries, apart from one elite band of Carthaginian officers, which they called the Sacred Battalion. The other thing is that for the first 400 years of their existence, they actually paid the local Berbers here rent for their city. What it says to me is that these are people who are not really interested in statehood. They really want to focus on one thing and one thing only, and that's business. In the end, they became a very affluent maritime power. They also acquired territories. They occupied the whole of this part of Africa down towards Libya, and they occupied Sardinia, Spain, and Sicily. With such territorial power comes obviously military and governmental responsibilities. I'm now standing in the heart of that maritime power. I'm actually in the old, if you like, boathouses of the military Punic port. It really is the most fantastic structure. It is a circle of water stretching from my left to my right the way around here like this. There would have been huge covered boathouses sweeping down to this circle. They would have had covered runways, covered slipways running all the way around like radiuses down into this lagoon. And they could then drag up their ships and repair them and dry dock them undercover. In the end, ownership of this territory brought with it conflict with other empires. First of all, it was with the Greeks over Sicily. And in fact, in the end, it was Sicily that proved to be their undoing. Nemesis for Carthage in the end came inevitably at the hands of Rome. After all, a republic such as that one would never allow such a flourishing trading empire to live alongside it. The wars between Rome and Carthage, the so-called Punic Wars, lasted for well over a century, and they were the most terrible wars of the ancient world. The first one alone lasted 22 years and was only resolved by the greatest sea battle that anyone had ever seen. At the end of it, Carthage was forced to disgorge Sicily and hand it over to Rome. The results of the Second Punic War were even more disastrous for Carthage. This primarily because of the genius of their young general Hannibal, who had effectively laid waste to the whole of southern Italy. At the end, Carthage was forced to surrender, abandon its fleet, and give up all its territories. It also had to pay an indemnity every year to the Roman Republic. Even though Carthage was now defeated and posed no threat whatsoever, Rome was never going to forgive or forget what it had done to them. The Roman economy was in ruins, and in the Senate the attitude was one of hatred, black propaganda, and the overwhelming desire for complete revenge. There was in fact one old senator there, Cato the Elder, who, whenever he got up to speak on whatever topic it might be, widows' pensions, the emperor's bread, building an aqueduct or taxes, he would always end his speech with the phrase, Carthago delenda est, Carthage must be destroyed. And in the end, it was swiftly done. In 146 BC, a Roman army arrived here off the coast of Tunisia, landed, and demanded that the Carthaginians tear down their own city and rebuild it 30 miles inland.